My name is Bond.
James Bond.
James Bond.
Kill Bond! Now!
What's a nice girl like you doing in a place like this?
Get down!
This is the big one, isn't it?
She'll never know what she missed.
An American space capsule is swallowed up by a rogue spacecraft running the risk of World War III, while Secret Service agent James Bond's mission comes to a deadly close. Upon resurrection, 007 is sent to Tokyo where he meets Mr. Henderson, whose theory is cut short. Bond follows a lead to the Osato Corporation, and after a few close calls, he finds safe haven with his contact Tiger Tanaka, who shows James Bond the benefits of living in Japan. Bond returns to the Osato Corporation posing as a wealthy industrialist, but his cover is blown. But Tiger Tanaka helps with the escape. While exploring Osato's dockyard, Bond is captured by Osato's men and interrogated by Helga Brandt, and is left to narrowly escape death by plane crash. Q arrives in Japan, and Bond does some reconnaissance work in Little Nelly, who gets a hot reception, but she defends her honor with great success. James Bond then becomes Japanese. Aki is killed in her sleep, and Bond goes deep undercover, marrying Kissy Suzuki, one of Tiger's agents. Bond undergoes ninja training, survives more assassination attempts, and arrives on a mysterious island, discovering the Spectre base in a hollowed-out volcano. Captured, Bond comes face-to-face with Spectre leader Ernst Stavro Blofeld. Tanaka's ninjas stage a full-on assault, and James Bond successfully prevents the second American space capsule from being hijacked. Bond escapes, but the volcano base is destroyed, and James Bond and Kissy Suzuki go off into the sunset. Written by Roald Dahl, directed by Lewis Gilbert, 1965's You Only Live Twice. What's up, Scott?
Hey, how you doing? So You Only Live Twice, one of the big Bond films. And this time in the director's chair is Lewis Gilbert.
Yeah, and this is kind of a weird one, isn't it? This is
it's kind of batshit crazy, actually.
It is. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. This is funny because this is, I mean, it's a film that is well liked by a lot of James Bond fans. I've always had sort of I wouldn't say love-hate relationship with it because that's a little strong, but just sort of mixed feelings on it. Sometimes, I can appreciate a lot of things about it. Other times I look at it and I just feel like, well, we had our sort of Fab Four. We had we had Dr. No through Thunderball, and I kind of feel like they had very distinct styles, and they were very specific stories about espionage, etc. This one takes it up a notch for sure, and really kind of goes out there. And for better or for worse, we're kind of, I feel like the analogies of going out to the stratosphere are coming to mind galore, and they all work because, again, we're in actual space this time, and we got hollowed out. I mean, this one just goes nutty. So, let's talk about whether or not that works.
Well, it is interesting because in the Austin Powers movies, they sort of mined this particular film quite a bit. The hollowed out volcano, the appearance of, either Dr. Evil, if you like, or Ernst Blofeld there. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here that is sort of become ridicule. But the thing is, the movie is sort of in on the joke, I think. It knows it's kind of absurd, but just kind of runs with it.
And that is a very good way to put it. You're right. It is, I think, it's pretty self-aware, I guess.
It is.
It does not take itself very seriously. It does not try to posture in any way. It is just sort of over-the-top fun, and it knows it. So, yeah, I mean, in that respect, it certainly works. And I will say this. I can recall, not all that long ago, and again, I've always kind of been mixed on this film, but I eventually did see it on the big screen.
I was going to mention that. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
really jealous, actually.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was great too. And it was nice
And it was
because
a
I had a lot of
theatrical
other Bond
print.
fans.
You saw. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you saw a theatrical print, right? Like on
I
film.
believe. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, it was an interesting experience, and again, I was with a lot of Bond fans when I saw it, and yeah, I do have to admit that when I saw it on the big screen, a lot of the big epic, particularly the ninjas all coming down, rappelling down into the volcano lair. I mean, that was pretty striking.
It's amazing.
It really did give
Yeah.
you a sense of size and scope, and so again, for a film that is kind of goofy at best, in my humble,
Okay.
there is a lot of things to sort of get from it. There's a lot of fun to be had with it.
No, you are absolutely correct. I really love like the first hour of this movie. I think it moves. It's really a crackerjack thing. It moves. It's got some great stuff, and it never really pauses to take a breath. It constantly moves. There's some amazing fight scenes, and the John Barry score is fantastic. It's probably his best
Yes.
yet up to this point.
Yes, I would agree with that. The score is really great. Again, we are now sort of dealing with some seasoned pros. I mean, this family has been together for a while.
I'm glad you put
Lewis
it like
Gilbert,
that, because that was it. It's this group of people, this particular group of people. The directors are coming or going, but it's like the sort of the same base of people behind the scenes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. And then the new player now would be Lewis Gilbert, who is
And the screenwriter.
directing. Mm-hmm. Yes, the screenwriter. I mean, this screen. I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly, but it's Roald, Roald.
You know what? You're asking the wrong guy. I'm terrible with names. If you want, we can sit here all night and I can destroy names for you.
But it's funny because he is also known for writing Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
So it's interesting that you brought him in for this, and you're kind of seriously. So if you're talking about an out of this world experience, there you go. So yeah, I mean, it is sort of, and again, Lewis Gilbert, I think, sort of starts a little trend where again things do get a little kind of crazy, and that kind of very down to earth script for like Thunderball. Again, we're not going to get that. We do get a lot, though. I will say this: there was, I sort of complimented when we talked about Thunderball how Terrence Young really took advantage of the locations. And I have to admit that I think they do the same thing here,
Yes.
where they really do take some serious advantage of the locations. And it's interesting, too, because I've always had, that's where the love-hate analogy comes in more. Again, I mentioned last time that I kind of like it when Bond films do a little globetrotting, where they're a little bit here, a little bit there,
Yes.
etc. Like Thunderball, this one is primarily in one location.
Yes.
So again, if Tokyo is not your cup of tea, well, you're sort of stuck.
Yeah, I guess so. I would find it hard for somebody not to have it as their cup of tea, though, because it's so beautiful. It's beautifully photographed here. It really is.
It is. It is certainly photographed well, and again, like I said, I mean, they do take full advantage of the locations, even as simple as that when they meet in the sumo fight.
I love all that, because that's like something
Yeah.
I've never, even to this day, you don't really. I mean, there probably is a channel for sumo wrestling, but I've never seen it.
Right.
But back in the day, you didn't see that kind of stuff, so it's kind of fascinating.
It was too, and I like how it's filmed, by the way, because I love
and
the
they took a little time with
visceralness.
it. They're not whizzing by that too, but it's interesting.
Absolutely, right. There's you could hear the sound effects of the guys like smacking into each other, big slabs of meat crashing into each other. So again, I like that, and again, they do kind of take full advantage of these locations, but again, it's also very urban. I mean, this is kind of like you're sort of stuck in a very city area. Well, and that's not totally true either, because again, they do sort of go out to, near the volcanoes and the ocean, and I mean, there is a lot of beautiful landscape later on. So yeah, like I said, it's just I feel like location-wise, because the whole thing just takes place in one spot, it's mildly claustrophobic in that respect. But again, they use it to the greatest degree of advantage I think they can.
They do. I have to say that this has probably my favorite gun barrel music of the entire series. I just love the gun barrel in this because it's very dramatic, the da-da-da, and then it's got a cool like guitar thing going on. I don't know, man. Just really, I find it really exciting. The opening with the space capsule and everything. I guess as the years progress, that's kind of like looking a little more dodgy, because it didn't look that bad. I don't know, maybe 20 years ago, but now, Well,
you know what I noticed this time watching it again. I hadn't really sat and watched this in a good while. And I didn't even notice this on the big screen, but when I did watch it this time around, I looked at my Blu-ray.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt like, boy, this is one case where I don't think the transfer to the Blu-ray and probably also the 4K more so, but I kind of felt like now we're kind of shining some spotlights on some of the not mistakes,
I know
but
you're saying,
again,
the
visual effects were sort of the best for the time.
Yeah.
And on screen when you're watching it with the gritty celluloid, fine.
Yes.
But now we're getting those transfers. I mean, I put it this way. I noticed that and he's got the cord that keeps him attached, tethered to the spaceship.
I shouldn't laugh, but I just always love that. There's some dialogue in that that's like it's not supposed to be funny, but it is to me. It's like it's coming right at us. It's coming right at us. My lifeline. It's caught.
Right. It's another spacecraft.
It's another spacecraft.
Yeah.
It's almost like
but.
Well, because it almost sounds like the hoods in Goldfinger.
Yeah.
What's with that trick pool table, right? Right, same idea.
Yeah, it's the same thing, right? But you know what makes it so interesting? It was like, you're in outer space and you got that John Barry track called "Capsule in Space,"
yes,
which is fantastic, and it's just kind of this crazy, wacky way to open the movie. And then you, instead of going with the action, they go with something a little different. They go with this is funny though. I gotta say, they do the death of James Bond, and it's like these two anonymous cops show up and they're like, we're too late. Well, at least he died on the job. It's like everybody knows who this guy is all of a sudden,
Right. Seriously.
And then what's funny. And then we have those beautiful main titles, Maurice Binder just killing it. And I love the segue after the one that goes, it dissolves into the harbor is a perfect match, from going from those main titles into the film proper. Wonderful job. But then there's like a newspaper that has, it has Bond's picture and it says, retired, not retired, but Admiral Royal Navy guy, deceased, killed, blah, blah, blah. And then if you fast forward to the film when Helga and Asado are talking to Blofeld there, they're talking about, he's talking about this guy has a Walter PPK, blah, blah, blah. And then he says, who that guy is? That guy is James Bond. And then she's like, but I thought he was dead. It was in all the newspapers. Oh, you mean the newspapers that had his picture in it? So it's like some of those things don't add up. It's just crazy. And there's another thing in this movie that drives me nuts is the whole him going Japanese. That's like, I can't stand that. I hate it. It doesn't work. It kind of glossed over kind of quickly here in the movie itself.
You covered a lot of ground right there. But.
Yeah. I know. I'm jumping back and forth.
Sorry.
But it's so dumb because I was reading the liner notes to the album the other night, and the guy said, "Well, there's these assassination attempts on Bond, so they decide to make him disguise him as a Japanese guy." But I'm like, that's not what happens. Even the guy writing the liner notes got confused because what happens is they turn him Japanese, and then there's 2 assassination attempts on him. That doesn't fool anybody.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's right away. He's Japanese, so it's not fooling
when
anybody.
he literally just had the transformation done. He walks in. He's like, "Hey, look at me." They go to sleep, and already the paint is not even dry on his hair or whatever he's supposed to be.
That Beatles wig,
and they're already trying to take him out.
That Beatles wig he's wearing is horrible.
Oh my God. Oh, but yeah, it's and that's frustrating because again, it's actually one of the few elements from the book that they held on to.
Yes.
Was the idea that they were going to train him to be Japanese and yada yada. He was going to blend in.
Because other than that, it doesn't really bear much resemblance to the book. Yeah.
No, not at all. Right, and that element stuck in here just sort of seems odd, and yeah, it is just really weird. I mean, it's seriously they're gonna bleach his skin a little bit and give him a funny wig, and he still talks like Sean Connery. So what the hell? Like,
but okay, now this is kind of a thing where we ate our vegetables first. We got that out of the way. There's some really great stuff in this movie though that I'd love to talk about. There's that great fight scene at Asato's building with that sumo wrestler. Now here's a question for you. I kept trying to figure this out. Was that the same sumo wrestler that gives him the tickets initially? I couldn't figure that out.
Oh, no. I think that's a whole different guy.
Because I was looking at that. It's like, wait a minute. Is that the same guy? But, yeah. I don't think that,
No, I think this is just a big guy. But I totally agree with you. That fight is great.
They're picking up couches and throwing it at each other.
Seriously, hitting each other with couches. I mean, oh my God, it's crazy.
It's so crisply edited, too. It's wonderful. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Right, the fight itself, the editing, everything, that really does work.
Because that scene, if we could back up a bit, that's the scene where he goes and he meets Henderson, played by Charles Gray. And that's pretty much set up as an exposition dump. What's cool about it is like you think you're kind of settling back in your chair and you're forgetting that this is a batshit crazy movie. And then all of a sudden he's talking and he stops mid-sentence and he's got that knife in the back. I mean, that would never, it's like totally unrealistic, but it's really interesting. And it's great because instead of going through an exposition dump, we actually move into some more action where he goes in, he goes to that building, Asato's building, and he has that fight. So that's much more interesting than, Charles Gray spewing out a bunch of stuff,
Yeah, it's actually interesting. Honestly, like you said, for a scene that is set up to look like we're just going to get a whole spill out of stuff, it never happens. Like he literally gets nothing from him.
And that's a weird thing too. He says when he makes him the vodka martini, he says, "Oh, that was third shaken. That was right." And Connery says, "Yeah." Now I guess he's just being polite, but
that's how I've always read that.
That's a wacky thing,
All that really works. I can't complain about any of that stuff.
Aki coming to his rescue, and then she's running away, and he's running down the hallway after her, and then into the subway system and everything. It's really intriguing, and it's great stuff. And then he meets Tiger, and then they're sort of wasted. They don't waste time. And then he goes into his private little train subway system there.
Yeah.
It's all interesting,
Yeah, yes, it is. I like the whole Aki part rescuing and then going down the little slide. That's pretty cool. I like that.
It's amazing. It's really fast paced.
Yeah. It is. That part when he falls down the thing and he slides into the chair, I kind of feel like that's where we're getting into a little Austin Powers-esque territory. But still, it's fun. I mean, again, I'm not gonna beat on it. And by the way, you sort of go from there, like you said, the train, and then you just sort of get like Tiger's hangout with all the girls and the bathing and stuff. And I like that too, because that's almost, the novel is weird and it sort of plays out more like just sort of a travelogue of Japan.
Right.
And the actual plot, is almost an afterthought. I mean, I kind of find that the book is not that great, so I don't mind that they took liberties with the film.
It was the book that followed On Her Majesty's Secret Service, right?
Yeah.
So that was more like a revenge book, I guess. Kind of, sort of.
Yes, but again, it's like we were saying, the Japan is really the only part of that story that sort of stays with. Some random elements, but not a lot. I mean, I think the name Tiger Tanaka stays the same. Actually, I think that changes a little bit. But for the most part, it's really just the Japan setting that stays with. But again, staying with the idea that it is sort of a travelogue and sort of an exploration of Japan in the novel, I do like these scenes with Tiger.
Yes.
Where they're chilling together, talking about Japanese culture. And again, I don't know how authentic that is. Do a lot of guys really get 5 women to bathe them every night? I don't know, but I'll take
Tiger's
it.
not going to be popular in 2019 America.
No. Oh, no. In Japan, women come second.
Or sometimes not at all.
And incidentally, there's another thing that sort of always struck me weird. Later on, when James Bond is getting the massage, and Aki comes in, and excuses the massage girl, and she starts kissing him. And when Connery turns around, he goes,
Aki.
Aki. And for Sean Connery, that's like an outburst of emotion, you know, like. So I remember being much younger watching that, thinking that there must have been more there than I was understanding. In fact, I literally remember watching that as a kid and thinking like, maybe that's someone he knows from like a past adventure or something or other. Because he really reacted like this long lost friend was returning. You know, again, for Connery, this is like, you know, like, whoa, you know. So yeah, I always thought that moment was a little odd.
It is. And yeah, because they don't really know, you know, they just met. You know, she meets him at the sumo thing, right? She drives him back. Yeah. She drives him to Henderson's, and then saves him at Asato's plant there, and then she runs away, and then that's it, and then she comes back.
That's it. That's the whole experience that he has with her.
You know, he probably thought he probably
so
spent
thrilled
more time with the masseuse that started on him than her.
Seriously, right? It was always, I always find that to be just kind of odd. I will say this though, I liked when he's talking to Tiger and he says something like, "Oh, so then she's with us then," and he says something about her being very competent, and I kind of had a flashback of From Russia with Love.
Yeah.
When he's talking about his son, saying like, "Oh, he's a very intelligent young man," or whatever.
Yeah, can we talk about that photo with that microdot that they get? And I like that it has all that information about like people have been liquidated and stuff. Are you really going to put that on?
Yeah.
On a microdot? I don't know, but it's fun. You know, it moves the plot along.
The Spectre file room is like loaded with evidence and confessions and.
One thing I did want to talk about real quick was M. They kind of did a little different thing here. He meets him in the submarine. I think it's a good scene. You know, it's great to see Bernard Lee back. You know, and it's kind of an interesting way. This is like one of the better, I think, M. Bond. You know, going to send you on a mission scenes. I don't know. It's interesting. I want to do a segment here. It got brought to our attention that we kind of, on the Thunderball review, that we kind of gave Q the shaft. So here's a segment we like to call Q times 2. Thank you.
Nicely done. Let's go.
So yeah, Q in this movie. Let's go. First, we'll do Q in Thunderball real quick. It's great. You know, he's all irritated that he had to be dragged to the Bahamas, but he gives Bond some cool gadgets like that underwater breather thing, and he's pretty much still following the direction that Guy Hamilton gave him, where Q's kind of like just kind of fed up with Bond and doesn't really want much to do with him, you know. He's just irritated that Bond doesn't really respect his gadgets and so forth. And Desmond Llewellyn kills it every time. You can always count on Desmond Llewellyn. And here he gives him Little Nelly.
The Little Nelly scene is great. And you're right, this is sort of the introduction, or I guess Thunderball was the introduction of sort of Q out in the field sort of stuff, which is interesting. The Little Nelly scene. Now I've always kind of felt that was a little weird. And again, see, this is where I feel like this movie kind of gets not off track, but again, what they're trying to do with it is very different. Put it this way, I feel like if Terrence Young was directing this film, he might have said, I'm not putting Sean Connery in that goofy thing that looks like a model plane that a kid would have made. Like, and putting this weird helmet with a thing on it. Like, he's supposed to be cool, you know, and you're putting him in this thing that makes him look like a goober.
Well, you know, the thing is, if you put me in that thing, I'm gonna look like a goober, all right? But Sean Connery kind of gets away with it.
I don't know if he does. I mean, I suppose. Well, but just look again. He's James Bond, he's Sean Connery, and all of these little moments, you know, they're all part of the iconography of Bond. So I sort of feel like almost by default it's okay. But I still kind of look at this thing and I'm like, wow, I'm really sort of stunned that somebody did that and said, let's build this little contraption and put him in it, and he just sits in it like, you know, like he's like a kid in the. I mean, he looks like a little kid sitting in the little thing in the front of the grocery store, like. But now that you mentioned CGI, one of the things I have to tell you that I noticed big time in this film, the green screen effect is real rough.
Oh, and
you know, I don't even. it's not even like back projection. A lot of times, you can tell they're using green screen because a lot of this stuff in the foreground will sort of disappear into the green screen, or blue screen, whatever they're doing.
I mean the
there.
back projection.
I think there's some parts where there's back projection, but honestly, like there's some moments where it doesn't look like back projection at all because some of the elements in the foreground are totally vanishing. Like you can see that parts of the windshield will totally vanish at some point because you could see it sort of falling away because of the effect. So again, I don't think it's back projection per se. I think they're actually trying to do green screens with this stuff. It's almost like when a weather person stands in front of the green screen, but they wear a green shirt.
Right, yeah.
And
No, I know
vanishes.
exactly what you're saying.
You can see little edges of things that are starting to vanish.
Yeah, I mean
here.
that's sort of you get those technical snafus in here, in those movies. They're sort of commonplace in these films, but it's of an era,
But again, and it's not a major criticism, but I do think it's sort of fair to point it out because again, some films will work within the confines of what they can do, effectively. Some try to shoot just a little too far, and the result is a little mixed.
No, you just reminded me of one of my favorite scenes in this film, and that's when he's at the docks. And there's that wonderful scene of him, there's like a wide shot, and you got the John Barry score going, and you sort of see everything, all these guys coming out from different sides of the frame, and him, Connery running and jumping, and it's a fantastic aerial shot. It's wonderful. And then I also like, him sort of jumping and hitting that pallet of stuff and just, doing the Barry Bond walk away.
Yes.
Doing Texas Switch there, though, but yeah.
Yes. But honestly, it's very effective here. They time that perfectly. Where the stuntman jumps off and there's Connery all of a sudden. It's almost seamless. So I have to give them credit there.
But then you go into this wacky scene with Helga, which is a good scene. It's very reminiscent of Fiona and Thunderball. But I really like the actress Karen Dor, who's the German actress. I really like her, even though she's very much a carbon copy of Fiona. I think this actress also put a little different stamp on her, just slightly different. But there's this whole thing where. And they do this, and it's a really good scene about there's a little subtext, and then he says, "I'm a spy," and she's like, "I know that," blah blah blah, and then they go through this whole convoluted thing of him, and then they're in an airplane. Why if she's gonna kill him, why didn't she just kill him?
You just don't get it, do you?
But you're absolutely right. First of all, the actress Karen Dor, you're absolutely right. She's great. I remember thinking, even watching the movie, that she looks really weird with the red hair. I remember feeling like they're obviously trying to recapture the Fiona stuff. Thank you. By doing the redhead again, and I get maybe they thought red hair is a dangerous woman would have red hair or something.
Right.
But I kind of thought the red hair on her was so unnatural. And then when you see the actress in real life, she's like a brunette. So it does seem a little odd. I remember even as a kid thinking that she looked very unnatural with that hair.
No kidding. No kidding. But yeah, it never bothered me. I always thought, wow.
Yeah, I mean, because honestly, because with Fiona, I mean, you could tell that's her natural hair. It was very obvious. I kind of felt like this one was like the Ginger Grant wig, sort of, from Gilligan's Island.
Right.
So, but anyways, but it's just a minor little observation. But yeah, I also agree with you too. I didn't quite understand why she goes through with the ruse. Yeah, it's like you said, not just that they take Bond in a plane just to crash the plane. I mean, again, over the top.
It seems very expensive and kind of hard to put together. And then he's going to show up, and I don't know.
That's kind of going back to the Batman TV series when they put them in the big contraptions to kill him. But even beyond that, they do the romance part, where again she's interrogating him. He seems to be winning her over. Right, she cuts him free. They make out. We assume that they make love, and then she kills him anyway. So I'm not getting why, why she's sort of going along with the ruse that she's buying into what Bond is saying, if she's only going to kill him in the next scene. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I know. Well, I guess like what Terrence Young said, they don't stand up to large scrutiny.
Right.
Yeah. I really like the guy who plays Asado, and I love that scene where they meet in that office. That's a really cool scene,
Yes.
when he's got the X-ray machine, he says, I think you're taking a risk."
Oh, right.
Yeah, cigarettes are no good for your chest. And then she comes over and Mr. Osato likes a healthy chest, and the way they have that Dutch angle, it's really great. And that guy who plays Osato, he was at the time. I mean, he had done some other movies and stuff, but he was like working as like a janitor at that point, and when he got cast, it's like crazy. Yeah, wow. So good for him.
Yeah, seriously.
And because he's really good in the movie too, I think. I
agree. How about the guy playing Tiger Tanaka?
Oh, he's great. Yeah.
I think he's really good. And again, I like the relationship because I think the relationship is kind of a Karen Bay throwback a little bit.
Yeah, it's cool. And it's neat that James Bond trains as a ninja. I just don't like I'm turning Japanese. I'm turning Japanese. Turning Japanese, I think I'm turning Japanese. I really think so. It's just so stupid, And I think we should talk about Ken Adam here. Because this is like a Ken Adam knockout, that volcano base.
Absolutely.
Holy mackerel, is that amazing.
Yeah, he absolutely he's outdone himself by a mile here. I mean, that volcano set, again, it's, harkening back a little bit to Austin Powers. It's got the whole thing. It's even got the monorail inside. I mean,
it's worth the price of admission. It really
is, absolutely. And again, that was the moment when I saw this in the theater. I was like, all right, now I'm sold. I'm convinced on this.
It's like when I was watching the spaghetti westerns. I only saw like The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, for example. I only saw them in pan and scan versions, and I didn't quite get what everybody was like raving about. And then I saw it in widescreen, and I went, now I get it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So Ken out. He really does. He goes above and beyond. And even the like Osato's office where he has the fight with the wrestler. I mean, that's a great set. There are some really good stuff. I mean, you're right. I mean, the volcano is just that's the climax of all of it.
Yeah, and we get Donald Pleasance says Ernst Stavro Blofeld.
I am Ernst Stavro Blofeld.
Oh yes, let's talk about him.
This is one of those things where I think. Yeah, I love Donald Pleasance. I think he's a great actor. And I think he could probably do almost anything you could ask him to. But he does play this a little bug-eyed. I'm more willing to sort of shift the blame. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's not quite right for Blofeld, in my personal opinion. I'm kind of leaning towards Lewis Gilbert. Because at the end of the day, he's the guy that says, hey, cut. We got that, know? So, and he could, Donald Pleasance, very talented. He could do a number of ways for you, you know? So they wanted to go in this particular direction, sort of bug-eyed and crazy with the scar.
Yeah.
And I know Donald Pleasance tried different things. Like at one point he tried a hunchback. They were doing that, and they tried a whole bunch of different things until they kind of... And plus, he took over. He came in late into the production. Because they originally cast another actor as Blofeld.
Right. That's kind of where I was headed. Is I think he was kind of a last-minute replacement. Yeah. So they were probably a little short on time to be able to get. But I totally agree with you that he's not the Blofeld that had been built up from Russia with Love forward by a long shot. I mean, they had a very specific kind of a character in mind, and then suddenly, like, right, he comes out and he's this little toad. I feel like the Scar was really like, well, we got to do something to sort of like spice this guy up and make him look a little menacing or something or other. So they did that, and it's kind of like, fine, whatever. I am with you that Donald Pleasance is a great actor. I've seen him in a lot of things that I really enjoy him in. But yeah, he's not quite the Blofeld that we were sort of anxious to see from the first few films. And by the way, watching him torture that poor cat throughout this whole movie is kind of funny. Like, I don't know if you ever noticed watching the movie, but the cat that he's got is not cooperating, and there are times when the cat just does not want to be there and is desperately trying to get out of his and he's holding tight, trying to keep the thing from running away. So I heard something afterwards about how there's something like the owner of the cat, like the cat was obviously a trained cat to work on camera. I heard something about the owner sued them afterwards because the cat refused to do anything ever again.
Really?
Like it was so distraught from that, it just hated anything. So yeah.
Well, we didn't talk about. We should talk about Kissy here. whose name is never really mentioned in the film.
Yeah, well, it's funny because again, we did talk briefly about Aki, and I think she's good. I like how they kept her voice. You know, how, like they're very prone to doing voiceovers for a lot of the female actresses, and they keep going to Nikki Vandersil for a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, everybody sounds like Ursula Andress from Dr. No.
Exactly.
Where is this cave?
Head straight across. The cave is over there.
Though, both those, just as a weird bit of trivia, both those actresses are also in the 1960s King Kong versus Godzilla. You know, when I was a kid,
right?
I was watching these things and I'm like, hey, all these Japanese actresses look the same to me. Well, they are the same. That's why.
Yeah.
Because, like the two movies I knew were You Only Live Twice and King Kong versus Godzilla. And it was like, wow, these Japanese actresses, they all look the same. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
That is funny. But she's good. And then, Kissy Suzuki. The character, the Bond girl in the novel, is named Kissy Suzuki. Mm-hmm. So when Aki is sort of killed off, 2/3 of the way through, then they do the marriage, with Bond and again, all for nothing. I mean, it's so silly. I mean, it's frustrating because it's almost like that whole thing about Bond turning Japanese, getting married, becoming like, if that was the movie, it could have worked. Like if they sort of like built on that idea more, you could have had something that works on its own. But as a afterthought, it's so clunky and weird. And again, none of it makes any sense. Like, why does he have to get married? Everybody knows who he is. Everyone's trying to kill him. It doesn't matter at one bit. So why they go through with it is
one bit.
Not even a tiny bit.
I know.
But they do it. They go through this whole thing,
Yeah.
and she's now she is dubbed over by the same. Again, she sounds like Ursula Andress when she talks. She doesn't have a lot of lines.
Think again, please.
We're supposed to be married.
Think again, please.
Exactly. There's a shot later when they are in the boat, exploring and trying to find the cave or whatever.
The cave is over there.
And she says something. I'm like, wow, she just sounded exactly like Ursula Andress. And incidentally, by the way, did you ever hear the story about how they tried to fire her?
I know there was some weird thing where where they switched roles. I think originally she was cast as Aki, and the other one was.
I think
Yeah.
so. I think at one point they just sort of felt that she was not working. Again, I mean, they had to dub all her lines over because she doesn't. I think her English was terrible. There's another Gert Frobe sort of a situation, and apparently when they literally said to her at one point to take her out to dinner and let her know that we can't really use her and try to break it to her gently, whatever. The next morning the guy comes back in and they're like, well, how did it go? She's like, she's going to kill herself. She's going to jump off the Dorchester Hotel and kill herself. Oh. So they're like, I think Cubby Broccoli just said, she's not that bad. I guess we just keep her. Literally. So.
Well, good for you. She didn't get the role, so.
Hey.
Yeah, they did. In those cultures, things can go. They can do.
Right.
I mean, it's really
she's
crazy.
She's going to Harry Carey because she gets fired from a role. But anyway, is she effective? I don't know. I mean, honestly, I feel like I probably, when I was younger, probably saw the movie several times before I ever knew what her name was, even. So it just is what it is.
She does. I don't think she registers that high on the Bond girl list for whatever reason. She's beautiful, and it's in her scene. She's capable in her scenes. Probably Aki's a little more memorable than she is.
Yeah.
But overall, this is kind of for me. And I have nothing. I mean, nothing against Japanese women or anything, but this kind of is a lower tier as far as the Bond girls.
It really is, and I mean, seriously. I mean, as part of my criteria when I review the movies, I like to talk about the romance and the dynamic between the Bond and his leading lady, the romance, whatever. I feel like here I just put a little NA. It's not applicable. There really is no dynamic between Bond and his leading ladies in this film. It's not about that.
They seem more like plot conveniences, not plot conveniences. What's the word I'm looking for? They're more like they're there almost to move the plot along in a way. And even they don't really have any. They're not really given much in the way of characterization.
Right? Yeah. I mean, and they're not. Honestly, they're not moving the plot forward much. They just seem to be sort of just attached to Bond because we need Bond girls.
I mean, even like some people complain about Domino from Thunderball, but she's like 3-dimensional compared to these characters.
Yeah, it's not. Again, this film is not here for that. Like the film is not about romance. It's not about anything having to do with that. It's about the spectacle of the film itself.
Yes, and on that score, it's amazing. It really is.
Yeah, again. I mean, honestly, they're like one of the things I said about Thunderball was that it's so iconic, and I mean the plot from Thunderball again. Hijacking the warheads, holding the world for ransom. That kind of, in some ways, became like a quintessential Bond plot. This one, possibly even more so. The whole, trying to pit different countries against each other, the threat of World War III because of an outside force. That's something that kind of comes back to the Bond franchise a few times.
If I may, I really think that, ironically, when Lewis Gilbert would return to the series with The Spy Who Loved Me, he'd pretty much be doing the same thing.
Yep.
I think that movie's better because it takes his plot here, and does a little more believable in my book with the submarines. That I can kind of swallow, as opposed to the whole space thing. But they also add in the element, I guess you'd call it like a B plot of the Barbara Bach character and her vendetta against Bond. So there's something else going on as well. I think The Spy Who Loved Me is a bit more superior telling of this particular story overall.
Yeah.
But
yes.
That being said,
yeah. No, you're absolutely right, though. I completely agree with you. It's almost like when they get around to doing that movie, they probably have had time to think about this plot and work on it, and what was lacking or what could we have done better? Because honestly, when you watch the film, if like for the first time you see it, you might not even be aware necessarily of that whole element of possibility of war, World War III. I mean, it's almost kind of like sort of glossed over very quickly. Like the plane gets hijacked in the beginning, and there's I shouldn't say stupid. I mean, I shouldn't be too hard. But when they have like, the Russians and the Americans sitting in that big funky looking dome thing. See, again, this is where you went from sets in Thunderball that were magnificent because it looked like it was, that big tall room with the everybody's talking, and here you got this really goofy little set. And it's like this mini United Nations sitting. Why are they sitting there in the position they're sitting? Unless there's like an audience in front, like a United Nations.
Yeah, it doesn't really bear that much investigation in a way.
Exactly right. Just
because you end up being disappointed by the results.
Right. But that whole idea about the British sort of sitting in between the Americans and the Soviets and that little bickering they do, like that's kind of forgotten real fast. And if you didn't know about it, you'd say, what's Blofeld's plot? Well, it's just to steal rockets because he wants them. Like, he just wants to steal the rockets because he likes them. Not so much. I mean, you really don't even know what his end goal is necessarily.
The Japanese are in on this. They have that one scene where, they talk about, and then they're sort of bankrolling this whole thing.
Right.
And, I like the way Blofeld he's extorting them basically, and the guy, the Japanese guy said this is extortion. And he's like, he's surprised. Do you know what Spectre stands for? Oh my,
exactly.
They're extorting me. Yeah,
Yeah. Seriously, right? Wow, double crossed by Spectre. Who would have guessed it?
We got to talk about really quickly that spectacular ending too, because they give you these spectacular sets and then they blow them up, and I think this is the first time in the series where they do the explosions, where the guys are doing like the trampoline jump in tandem with the explosions, which is really effective and cool. And we got that one ninja guy that comes in with the sword. That's great stuff.
Totally, yeah. Oh. That's good stuff. I gotta hand it to them in that respect. I mean, it was a big over the top, and it was really the first time you'd seen something like that. Right. I mean, honestly, you're talking about The Spy Who Loved Me. So yeah, I mean, for if you look at the big climax in The Spy Who Loved Me, that was 10 plus years later. It's not even like they didn't even add that much to it than they did here. I mean, here they kind of got it nailed. I mean, it's the big over-the-top action scene with people blowing up all over the place. I mean, it's pretty well done.
You Only Live Twice. I'm going to give you Only Live Twice. There's still something special for me about these early Bonds, Connery Bonds. Even we seem to really dwell on a lot of the flaws in this film, but I'm going to go with an 8. I don't think it's as quite as good as what has preceded it, but it's still a lot of fun. It's got Connery. The Ken Adams sets are fantastic. The music score is wonderful. I don't know what the best John Barry score is, but it's either You Only Live Twice or On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Always hard to choose. But boy, it's a beautiful score, and there's some great action in here. And even though we were kind of laughing about some of the inconsistencies in this movies and some of the plot things that are just crazy, but even that is kind of fun in a way. It's one of the Bond films where I could just throw on like on a Saturday night when I'm a little sleepy and just kind of just veg to it and have a great time. It's great with a big tub of popcorn. It's one of those type of films. Yeah.
Okay, my score is going to sound harsh, but I have to sort of put it in perspective. And again, my scores they're great. Everything's graded on a curve. My all-time favorite is a 10. My least favorite is a 1. And everything else sort of falls in between. And I'm going to give this one a 5.
Ooh.
And yeah, I know. It sounds kind of harsh. But again, anything above a 5 falls into my favorite Bond films. Anything below a 5 is my my least favorites. And so this one just sort of falls right at the border. I don't hate it. I don't love it. And it sort of represents kind of a tipping point into a world that is not quite my James Bond. Again, we just came off Dr. No all the way through Thunderball. And to me, those are my Fab 4. They really can do no wrong. Connery is at his best. We're still doing Fleming stories fairly authentically. This one becomes again it's a journey into fantasy. It's frankly the Moonraker of the Connery films, and I don't think that's harsh. And again, Moonraker's fun too, just not what I'm here for. In Dr. No, it was still about rockets. It was still about not hijacking, but, tinkering with the course of rockets. But you only saw the rockets through the viewpoint of Dr. No in his laboratory, on screens, etc. This movie, full-blown, takes you into space. We are in space watching this film. So it is a break from the reality that I think we've grown accustomed to with James Bond films. And again, a lot of people really like that. For me, not as much. But again, the trade-off is some pretty awesome spectacle. Again, seeing this film on the big screen gave me an appreciation for the volcano lair and the stunt work. So I do get that. So again, it's not a bad film. It kind of redeems itself in a different way, but it's not going to be on par for me with some of the greats. So I'm going to give this one a 5.
I could do least favorite off the bat. It's the Japanese thing.
Turning Japanese, I think I'm turning Japanese, I really think so.
The whole the beetle wig, the eyes. It's really dumb and stupid. It doesn't work. And then otherwise, I think kind of a really fast-paced and well-done film. That's a little more spectacle than substance, but it does its spectacle really well.
My least favorite part, and I know this is kind of mean because I appreciate the actor, but it's my little buddy here. It's Donald Pleasance as Ernst Stavro Blofeld. Sorry, buddy. Again, it's not horrible, but it's not the Blofeld that we were sort of accustomed to, or not the Blofeld we were leading up to. I mean, you got a very specific character when you watch From Russia with Love through Thunderball. And then this guy comes out and it's like, again, it's old Dr. Evil. So, yeah, it's really not working for me. And he's not menacing. He's not threatening. Even with the big scar, he's not very threatening, not very menacing. So, that's it. It's not my favorite.
My favorite part of the movie, you know what? I'm going to say that couch fight. It's pretty amazing. That fight scene. I was also going to go with some of the volcano stuff. Like I like James Bond doing his whole ninja thing and the Barry score, and he's kind of like crawling down, going inside to the base and rescuing those astronauts and everything, and the big fight. It's really great. I love it. like I said, once again, the John Barry score, especially the expanded score that they released quite a few years back now. I think back in I want to say in 2000, somewhere around that timeline, because the LP was really good that they had originally, but just the time constraints that they had on records back in the day. So it was great to get an expanded album of this later down the road. It's terrific. And I don't think a week goes past where I don't listen to something, and usually You Only Live Twice or On a Managed Secret Service or one of the classic Bonds finds its way into my playlist somewhere. So it's just this music and this movie. It's just such a part of my life. I just can't. It's hard. It's hard for me almost to be subjective about it.
My favorite part, well, listen, I have to concur. The score is fantastic. John Barry he's really hitting new heights with this one. And yes, the fight with the big wrestler at the Osato Corporation, that's terrific. I'm honestly kind of stuck, and it's not, like I said, it's not a bad film. I'm not bashing the film by any stretch, but there's not a lot in here that really kind of hits me on a gut level. Even things that you think would be pretty cool, the ninja training, for example, sounds fun, but it's kind of glossed over for just some silly parts. And but I will give it to the Japan setting, and I think Bond and Osato talking, that kind of male bonding moment is a lot of fun. And of course, the girls don't hurt either. So I do think that the location, they do take full advantage of the location. The sumo wrestler fight in the opening is great. But yeah, I'm going to give it to the scene of Bond and Osato. Just chilling out in the hot tubs with girls, Not too shabby. My friend, thank you very much, as always.
Yes. And remember, I gave this an 8. He gave it a 5. Goodbye.
Okay, they can't all be 10s, all right? Anyway, my friend, thank you once again for being here.
Thank you very much. Always a blast. Thank you very much.
And Being James Bond Reviews will return.
James Bond.